So for thousands of years across like so many different cultures and continents, there has been this incredibly persistent, universally comforting idea,
Yeah,
right?
the red thread of fate,
Exactly, the red thread of fate. And if you look at the origins, like in ancient Chinese mythology, there's this belief in Yulao,
right? The lunar matchmaker god.
yeah, who ties this invisible red silken cord around the ankles or the fingers of two people who are, destined to meet.
And the myth promises that this thread, it might stretch, right?
Right.
It might tangle in the chaos of life, but it will never, ever break.
Never break. It is like the ultimate romantic safety net. It basically tells you that no matter how messy or chaotic your life gets, your ultimate connection is just cosmically secured.
It's a beautiful thought, really.
It is. But what if we took that deeply sacred, comforting myth and we just put it under a microscope?
Oh, this is where it gets dark.
Right. What if we realized that this thread isn't a magical cosmic bond at all, but like a surgical restraint?
Which completely shatters the fundamental premise of romantic destiny, honestly.
It really does.
Because suddenly, you aren't tethered by the gentle hand of the universe.
Yeah.
You are being actively restrained by a mechanism that is designed to look like love.
Designed to look like love.
And that is the core friction of the material we are analyzing today.
Yeah.
We are looking at a dynamic where the very thing that is supposed to be keeping you safe is, well, it's the exact thing slowly destroying you.
So today's deep dive is an intensive exploration of an essay analyzing a song. The song is titled Red Thread Theory, The Anatomy of Destructive Destiny.
A very heavy title.
Super heavy. And our mission today is to basically take this text apart down to the studs. We're going to examine how a romanticized connection can function as a covert psychological cage.
Right. And more importantly, we're going to dive deep into the biological and psychological reasons why we do this.
Yes. Why we, as human beings, are so easily wired to confuse the physical alarms of, like, absolute danger with the intoxicating rush of true love.
It happens so much more often than we like to admit.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we aren't just looking at the aftermath of a bad breakup here.
No, not at all.
This is a forensic, step-by-step examination of how a person has to physically and mentally untangle themselves from mythology that someone else aggressively built around them.
And you can see that forensic approach immediately, just in the title itself.
Right.
Red thread theory, not the red thread of fate.
Just adding the word theory changes everything.
What's fascinating here is that a theory isn't a romantic absolute. A theory is a hypothesis that demands to be tested and scrutinized.
It has to be proven.
Exactly. The author is taking this ancient, untouchable concept of destiny and basically placing it on a cold steel examination table.
Which is such a striking image.
And the text asks a profoundly unsettling question. Is it possible for a connection to feel entirely, undeniably destined and at the exact same time be foundationally destructive?
Man, we usually treat those two concepts as like completely mutually exclusive.
Right. If it feels like destiny, it must be inherently good.
Yeah, and if it's destructive, well, then it was just a mistake. You
Yeah.
know? We struggle to hold both of those truths in our hands at once.
We really do.
So, the analysis kicks off by forcing us to look at the sheer physicality of this bond. It focuses on the opening lyric, which goes, "The thread you stitched into my wrist, a crimson knot tied with a violent twist."
Such a visceral opening line.
It is.
Yeah.
And the crucial distinction established right out of the gate is that this thread isn't tied around her, it is physically stitched into her living tissue.
And that distinction carries an immense amount of psychological weight.
How so?
Well, think about the mechanics of a knot tied around a wrist, right?
Mm.
Like a friendship bracelet.
Yeah, sure.
It just sits on the surface of the skin. If it gets caught on something or if you simply outgrow it, you can slip it off. You can cut it.
It leaves no trace.
Exactly. But a stitch fundamentally alters the integrity of the body.
It breaks the skin.
A stitch requires penetration. A needle has to puncture the dermis, drag a foreign object through the flesh, and pull it tight.
Ugh. When you say it like that.
It's invasive. And because our bodies are miraculous survival machines, the living tissue immediately begins to react to that intrusion.
Right. The immune response.
Yes, it sends white blood cells, it creates inflammation, and eventually the skin attempts to heal itself right over that foreign thread.
I was actually trying to picture the sheer mechanics of that while reading, and I kept thinking about getting a really deep wood splinter as a kid.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
Right. If you get a deep splinter and you ignore it because, you're scared of the tweezers.
Which every kid is.
Exactly. Your body doesn't just push it out. It eventually heals the skin completely over it.
It adapts.
Yeah, the body's own natural, healthy attempt to fix the problem actually traps the foreign object inside you.
Wow.
And once the skin heals over it, you can't remove that splinter without a sterilized needle. You can't get it out without drawing your own blood and causing yourself acute pain all over again.
The adaptation becomes the trap. That is a phenomenal way to understand the mechanism this text is describing.
Thanks. It just made so much sense to me.
Because this kind of psychological stitching, much like the splinter, doesn't happen in one massive, traumatizing event.
Right.
If a stranger walked up to you and tried to stitch a thread into your arm, you would fight for your life.
Obviously. You'd run away.
But in this dynamic, it happens through micro-concessions.
Micro-concessions. Okay, explain that.
The text maps this out perfectly. It's a slow erosion of boundaries. One day, a small boundary is crossed, and it's excused as passion.
Oh, okay.
That's a stitch. A week later, a moment of cruel silence is misinterpreted as mysterious depth.
That's another stitch.
Exactly. The needle goes in, the skin is pulled tight. Over time, those individual, isolated stitches form a continuous seam.
So it just becomes normal.
Yes. Your psychological immune system stops recognizing the behavior as a foreign threat.
Yeah.
It just starts accepting it as a permanent part of your emotional anatomy.
Wow. And there's also this incredibly twisted irony built into the very concept of stitching, right?
Oh, definitely.
Because if you are in a hospital getting stitches, it's a reparative act.
It's meant to heal.
Yeah, a doctor uses a stitch to close a wound and protect you from infection. But in the reality of this text, the instrument that is supposedly holding the relationship together is identical to the instrument causing the laceration.
It's a paradox.
The person offering the quote-unquote healing connection is the exact same person driving the needle in.
Right.
So the subject is constantly being drawn toward the very source of her pain because she has been conditioned to view it as the source of her comfort.
And that creates a state of perpetual cognitive dissonance.
I can imagine.
You basically have two entirely different biological systems at war with each other.
Which systems?
Well, her attachment system, the part of the brain that craves connection, safety, and love, is screaming, "This person is vital. Hold on. Move closer."
Okay, yeah.
But her sympathetic nervous system, her primal survival instinct, is sounding the alarm, saying, "This environment is hostile. You are bleeding. Flee."
So she's torn in half.
She is deeply attached and highly alarmed simultaneously. And the author is very deliberate about where this biological war is taking place.
Yes, the placement of the stitch.
Right. The stitch isn't placed arbitrarily on a shoulder or an ankle. It is stitched directly into the wrist.
The wrist. It's like the most vulnerable real estate on the arm.
Exactly.
It's where the radial artery sits just millimeters beneath the surface. It's the place where you take a pulse, where the body rhythmically announces, "I am alive."
It's the core of her vitality.
So by locating the stitch right over the pulse, the text suggests that the relationship hasn't just compromised her boundaries, right? It has hijacked her central biological rhythm.
Precisely. Let's look at the biological reality of what happens when a vulval partner hijacks that rhythm.
Okay, let's get into it.
The text breaks down a cycle of rupture and return.
Rupture and return.
Right. When this partner withdraws, maybe through silent treatment, physical absence, or sudden coldness, her body registers it as an existential threat.
So she panics?
Her pulse skyrockets.
Yeah.
Her brain floods with cortisol and adrenaline. She is thrust into a state of intense panic and distress.
God, that sounds exhausting.
It is. But then he returns. He offers a breadcrumb of affection or reassurance.
And then what happens biologically?
Immediately the panic subsides. Her heart rate regulates. She experiences a massive flood of relief, accompanied by a spike in dopamine.
Oh, wow.
And here is the foundational tragedy the text identifies. The human body can very easily mistake the ending of distress for the presence of profound love.
Wait, let me stop you there, because I think a lot of people listening might be wondering about the line between healthy passion and this kind of destructive panic.
It's a very blurry line for a lot of people.
Right. Think about the early days of any intense romance. The sweaty palms, the racing heart, the absolute agony when they take 3 hours to text you back.
We romanticize all of that.
We do. We've been taught by every movie and love song that those physical symptoms are the universal proof that you are falling head over heels.
Right.
So what does this all mean? How is anyone in the heat of the moment supposed to differentiate between the chemical rush of a grand destiny and the chemical panic of a destructive cage?
It is exceptionally difficult from the inside, and honestly, that's why this text is so empathetic.
It doesn't blame her.
It doesn't judge the subject for being confused at all,
Yeah.
but the psychological distinction is crucial here.
Okay.
A racing pulse only proves that you are alive and reacting to a high-stakes stimulus. It proves the situation has emotional weight.
Right, you care about it.
Yes, but it does absolutely nothing to prove that the environment is actually safe.
Wow. Okay.
Let's strip away the romance for a second. Imagine you are standing on the very edge of a 1,000-foot cliff.
Oh, God. Just thinking about that gives me vertigo.
Exactly. Your heart is hammering against your ribs, your palms are sweating, your breathing is shallow.
Pure terror.
But biologically, your body doesn't know if you are exhilarated by the breathtaking view or terrified that a gust of wind is going to push you over. It just knows you are highly stimulated.
So, in the context of the relationship, he's basically constantly pushing her to the edge of the cliff, letting her dangle there in sheer terror, and then pulling her back by the collar at the last possible second.
Exactly. When he creates a rupture, he activates her cliff edge terror.
Yeah.
When he returns, he pulls her back onto solid ground. And because he is the one pulling her back, her brain wires itself to view him as the savior.
But he pushed her.
That's the tragedy. He is also the one pushing her toward the edge in the first place. He becomes both the architect of the terror and the exclusive cure for it.
Man.
This is the exact mechanism of a trauma bond.
Being the source of the poison and the only available antidote, that's an incredibly potent form of control.
It is absolute control.
And the lyrics capture that hostile takeover of her biology perfectly, right? They say, "You stole my pulse and made it beat for you, built a throne where marrow used to glow."
Oh, I love that line.
I want to pause on that imagery because it is absolutely devastating.
It's a brilliant articulation of internal colonization.
Internal colonization, yeah.
Let's examine the word throne. A throne is not just a place to sit. A throne is a physical manifestation of absolute, unquestionable authority.
It's where the ruler sits.
Exactly. By building a throne inside her, his moods, his needs, and his erratic presence become the ruling laws of her internal world.
So she doesn't even belong to herself anymore.
Right, her own internal rhythm is completely subjugated.
And he builds this throne, the lyric says, where marrow used to glow.
Yes, the marrow.
And marrow isn't just bone, it's the factory. It's the soft tissue deep inside the bone that literally manufactures new red and white blood cells.
It creates life.
It represents her self-directed vitality, her ability to generate her own life force. He hasn't just taken over her mind, he has excavated her core ability to sustain herself.
He hollowed her out.
Yes, and replaced it with a monument to his own authority.
When your very marrow has been excavated and your biological alarms are constantly firing, you are existing in a state of sheer chemical chaos.
Which no one can survive for long.
No, the human brain hates chaos. It cannot sustain that level of cognitive dissonance indefinitely.
So what does it do?
It has to rationalize the situation to survive it. It has to invent a reason for why it is staying in a burning building.
Right.
And the primary tool the brain uses to rationalize trauma is language.
Which shifts the analysis perfectly to how we talk about our own pain.
Right.
The text highlights this with the lyric. You called it fate, you called it sweet embrace, but just a ghost to haunt your empty space.
This part is so crucial.
The author is basically pulling back the curtain on how language acts as a cloaking device for abuse.
Because language is the ultimate framing mechanism. Notice the phrasing there, you called it.
You called it, yeah.
It sharply separates his naming of the dynamic from her actual physical experience of the dynamic.
He's dictating the reality.
Yes. He labels the chaotic connection fate. And if you convince yourself that the intense pain you are feeling is fate, then enduring it no longer feels like victimization.
It feels like a heroic trial.
Exactly. You aren't a victim, you are a tragic hero enduring a cosmic test.
Wow.
And then he labels his possessive restraint a sweet embrace.
Yeah.
By reframing a chokehold as a hug, he completely flips the moral script.
Because if it's a hug, you should want it.
Right. If someone is offering you a sweet embrace and you try to pull away, suddenly you are the one being cold, ungrateful, and cruel.
Oh, that is so manipulative. And we see this all the time, right? Not just in extreme relationships, but everywhere in our culture.
All everywhere.
We romanticize the absolute worst behaviors through language.
Yeah.
Think about like classic rom-coms.
Oh, yes. The boombox outside the window.
Right. Where a guy ignores a woman's clear boundaries, shows up at her job uninvited,
Hmm.
refuses to take no for an answer, and we call it passionate. We call it fighting for her.
We use poetry to dress up stalking or emotional volatility.
We really do. And it brings to mind this incredible metaphor later in the text about the velvet knot becoming the noose.
Yes, the velvet knot.
I think the velvet represents all the genuine, tender, beautiful moments they shared. Because it wasn't all bad, right? If it was all bad from day one, she would have just left.
Exactly. There was real velvet.
But the velvet is just a tactile diversion. It's wrapped around a lethal knot. And because the material is so soft against your skin, it takes a terrifyingly long time to realize that it is actively restricting your airway.
That is a phenomenal observation. The velvet is what makes the trap work.
Yeah.
And I think this is a moment where anyone listening needs to hold a mirror up to their own life.
For sure.
How often do we use a romanticized, elevated vocabulary
Yeah.
to mask a toxic reality?
I mean, we do it at work, right?
We see it in the workplace constantly. A company demands you work 80-hour weeks, texts you at midnight, offers zero boundaries.
And they call it a passion project, or they say, we are a family here.
Yes, we're a family. We call a deeply volatile, draining friend beautifully complicated.
Right.
The text is begging us to strip away the poetry, burn the velvet, and ask a brutally sterile question.
Which is?
What is the literal function of this thread? Not what did it promise, not what beautiful name did we give it. What is it actually doing to the person right now?
And the unavoidable answer in this text is that the thread is choking her.
It is.
But that forces us to look at the other side of the equation. If this dynamic is destroying her, why does he need it so desperately?
What is he getting out of it?
Right. What purpose does this velvet noose serve for him? And the lyric gives us a massive clue. It's about a ghost haunting his empty space.
The empty space is the psychological void inside of him.
Okay.
It could be profound insecurity, unresolved trauma, narcissism, or just a deep echoing loneliness.
Like a black hole.
Exactly. But here is the critical part. He doesn't actually want a real, complex, living woman to fill that space.
Why not?
Because a living woman is highly inconvenient.
Oh.
She has her own needs. She gets tired. She demands reciprocity. She has boundaries. And most terrifyingly for him, she has the autonomy to leave.
And he can't handle that.
He doesn't want that at all. He wants a ghost.
A ghost.
Yes, a ghost is an echo. It can be summoned when he needs validation, projected onto, and manipulated perfectly to fit whatever narrative he is spinning that day.
So she's just an object to him.
He needs her solely for the function she performs, not for the human being she actually is.
And that desire to strip away her humanity while claiming to worship her leads to what I think is, like, the most visually striking and disturbing metaphor in the entire deep dive.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The lyric is, I'm the supernova in your jar. You count the stars while watching me bleed fire.
The sheer physics of that contradiction is brilliant.
It is.
Think about it. A supernova is the explosive death of a massive star. It is an event of unimaginable scale, heat, and uncontrollable destruction.
It's infinite.
But a jar is domestic, finite, fragile, and designed to sit quietly on a shelf.
Right.
This single image perfectly encapsulates the paradox of how someone can idealize you and dehumanize you in the exact same breath.
Which is wild because we normally think of dehumanization as an insult, right?
Right.
Treating someone like dirt, degrading them, telling them they are worthless. But the text is pointing out that putting someone on a massive pedestal is functionally identical to locking them in a cage.
It's the same thing.
Both actions deny the person their basic earthly humanity. He looks at her and calls her a supernova. He worships her brilliance and her intensity.
But he demands containment.
Yeah, he demands that this infinite burning energy exist only in a form that he can screw a metal lid onto and control.
He wants the prestige.
He wants the prestige and the warmth of a dying star, but he refuses to deal with the reality of its scale. He basically wants to own the light without getting burned.
And that transitions perfectly into the second half of the lyric, which is, you count the scars while watching me bleed fire.
Bleed fire. God.
The author is forcing us to look at two radically different subjective experiences of the exact same traumatic event.
From inside and outside the jar.
Yes. From his vantage point, safe on the outside of the glass jar, a supernova is a beautiful, abstract catastrophe.
He's just watching.
He gets to sit back and play the philosopher. He counts the stars. He harvests the beautiful aftermath of her emotional explosions.
For his own benefit.
Right. Maybe he uses her turmoil to fuel his own art. or to play the role of the long-suffering tragic lover in his social circle. He extracts meaning from her breakdown.
Meanwhile, she is on the inside of the jar.
Yeah.
She isn't experiencing abstract beauty. She is literally physically bleeding fire. Her nervous system is frying. She is burning alive.
And he is treating her destruction as a spectator sport.
It totally reminds me of how society often treats artists who are struggling with addiction or mental health issues.
Oh, that is a perfect parallel.
Right. We love the tragic, tortured artist trope. We consume their pain. We listen to the heartbreaking albums they write while they are spiraling. We call them geniuses, and we count the stars they produce.
Completely ignoring the cost.
Exactly. Completely ignoring the fact that a real human being is bleeding to death in front of us just to provide us with that entertainment.
It is a fundamentally parasitic transaction. He is farming her emotional pain to synthesize his own glow.
Farming her pain.
Wow. But this is where the text makes a profoundly uncomfortable pivot.
Okay, where does it go?
It doesn't allow the subject to remain in a state of pure, passive victimhood. It asks a necessary but difficult question. Why did she agree to sign this contract in the first place?
Oof. Okay.
We look at the lines. The needle's deep. The ink is cold. A story bought, a spirit sold.
Let's unpack the imagery of the needle and the ink first, because it builds on the earlier idea of the stitch, but it evolves it, right?
It does.
Now, the needle isn't just a surgical tool, it's an instrument of authorship, like a tattoo needle. He's actively writing his version of reality, his narrative, deep into her skin.
But the crucial detail is that the ink is cold.
Cold ink, meaning what?
This signifies a profound lack of genuine empathy. He has the vocabulary to interpret her. He can write sweeping poetic declarations about her soul.
Right, calling her a supernova.
Yes, he understands her symbolically as a supernova or a muse. But he is entirely incapable of providing warm, reciprocal, human care for the actual woman sitting in front of him.
He doesn't actually care about her.
Not at all. He is obsessed with defining her, but he has zero interest in protecting her.
So here is where I have to play devil's advocate.
Go ahead.
If I'm reading this and I realize the ink is that cold and I see that this guy is just using me as raw material for his own ego, my immediate instinct is, like, why wouldn't she just walk out the door?
Which is what everyone asks.
Right. Why stay and volunteer to be the canvas for someone's cold ink?
And that right there is where the text delivers its most vital piece of psychological nuance.
Okay.
It refuses to infantilize her. It acknowledges a harsh, uncomfortable truth about human nature. She receives something highly intoxicating in this transaction, too.
What did she get?
The lyric says a story was bought. She was being paid in a currency she desperately craved at the time. She received his absolute, unblinking attention.
Oh.
She got to feel uniquely chosen out of everyone else in the world. She got to occupy this highly elevated, romanticized role of the eternal muse.
I see.
The text makes a devastating observation here, noting that for many people, being intensely observed felt like being deeply known.
Wow. Being intensely observed felt like being deeper known.
Just a powerful realization.
I think that line alone could explain half the toxic relationships on Earth.
Easily.
We are so starved for genuine connection that when someone puts us under a microscope and just studies our every move, we mistake that clinical scrutiny for deep, soulful understanding.
Precisely. When someone makes you the absolute center of their cosmic drama, when they're constantly analyzing you and writing poetry about your pain, it is a massive ego stroke.
It feels validating.
It does. The text is very careful here, though. It does not say she deserved the abuse.
Of course not. No one deserves to be harmed.
Exactly. But it insists that acknowledging her own participation is the only way out.
She has to see her own role in it.
Yes. She has to admit that she offered up pieces of her autonomy because being deemed an indispensable tragic muse felt safer and more special than just being an ordinary, unobserved, everyday woman.
Right. She sold her spirit to buy the narrative because the narrative made her feel vital.
That's exactly it.
But the tragedy of that bargain is that the extraction process doesn't just stop once he has enough material for his story.
It never stops.
He doesn't just take a little bit of her light and leave her be. The extraction continues until the actual living woman is entirely hollowed out and replaced by the artificial construct he built over her.
And this brings us to some very painful lyrics.
Yeah. Traded the woman for the lies. Do you know how it feels to bleed for art? And then, you saved my life like a trophy high, while in the dark, you watched the real me die.
The dichotomy between the woman and the lies, which the author notes can also be read as lines, as in lines of poetry or script, is the core conflict of identity here.
The woman versus the lies.
The woman is a living organism. She is autonomous, she is messy, she contradicts herself, she has physical needs.
And crucially, she possesses the power of the word no.
Exactly. The lies, or lines, are the flattened, two-dimensional archetypes he pastes over her face. She is the muse, the savior, the tragic beauty.
So he just erases her.
He actively traded away the complex reality of a human partner for a flat, predictable storyline he could entirely control.
The trophy metaphor perfectly captures the grotesque nature of that trade.
It really does.
He holds up the fact that he, quote-unquote, saved her like a shiny brass cup. But when you think about the function of a trophy, it has nothing to do with the thing it represents.
Right. A trophy isn't about the event.
Exactly. A trophy is an inanimate object whose sole purpose is to provide public evidence of the owner's achievement.
It's all about him.
By turning her survival into a public spectacle, he isn't celebrating her resilience. He is building a monument to his own heroism. He gets to wear the cape.
And while he is standing in the spotlight, holding up this shiny narrative of his own nobility, the actual flesh and blood woman inside that dynamic is suffocating in the dark.
Alone.
Completely unreachable. He methodically dismantled all of her emotional defenses, he stripped away her boundaries, and he convinced her that this total, terrifying exposure was what true intimacy looked like.
But it wasn't intimacy at all.
No. The text makes a defining argument here. Access without protection is just consumption.
Oh man, say that again.
Access without protection is just consumption. You cannot demand full access to someone's most vulnerable inner life and then take zero responsibility for keeping them safe once you're inside.
I was actually trying to think of an analogy for this. Initially, I thought of like a butterfly pinned to a board.
A classic image, but...
But honestly, that's too passive, right? It's more like architectural scaffolding.
Oh, I like that. Explain.
He wanted to build this massive, towering monument to his own ego, to his own identity as a savior and an artist. But he couldn't build it on his own, so he used her as the scaffolding.
Wow. Yes.
He bolted her to his sides, made her bear all his weight, and used her to climb higher and higher. But once the building was finished, once he had the beautiful structure and everyone was admiring him...
He doesn't need her anymore.
Exactly. Scaffolding is ugly, it's inconvenient, so he just dismantles her and leaves her in a pile on the ground in the dark. Her only purpose was to facilitate his rise.
That is an incredibly accurate mechanical breakdown of the dynamic. She was the temporary structure required to build his permanent delusion.
Yeah.
And as she finally wakes up to this reality, as she realizes she isn't a partner, but just scaffolding, just a canvas for his wounds, the text reaches its absolute thesis.
The turning point.
This is the moment of psychological reclamation.
Let's dig into that thesis. The bridge of the song hits with this sudden realization. You didn't want the girl, you wanted the gravity. The way my collapse gave your ghost some reality.
If we pull back and look at the broader psychological implications here, this is a masterful articulation of projective identification.
Projective identification. What does that mean in this context?
Well, look at the word gravity. Gravity is a force. It's the effect her presence creates in the room, the emotional weight, the inspiration, the intensity, the sheer gravitational pull she generates.
Okay, I follow.
He's addicted to the force, but he despises the responsibility of the girl.
Because the girl is a human being.
Exactly. The girl requires empathy, compromise, and patience. He wants the physics without the physicality.
In the second part of that, the way my collapse gave your ghost some reality is just chillin'.
It is the darkest truth of the entire piece.
Why?
Because his internal ghost, his trauma, his emptiness, his lack of identity was formless and invisible. He couldn't feel his own edges.
So he was just empty.
But when he applies enough pressure to her that she finally breaks, when he triggers her collapse, her tangible, visceral suffering suddenly acts as a mirror for his invisible pain.
Oh my God.
By making her fall apart, he finally feels real. He gets to cast himself in the movie, playing in his head. He uses her visible breakdown to legitimize his invisible ghost.
He is literally outsourcing his own psychological collapse onto her body.
Yes.
And the lyrics follow that up with a haunting question. Was I the canvas, or just your wound? A masterpiece carved in a hollow room.
The word carved is so important here.
It is. The use of the word carved here is so intentional because if you are a painter working on a canvas, you create art by adding material.
Right, paint, layers.
You add color, you add layers. But if you are a sculptor carving a masterpiece, you create the art by removing material. You take a whole block of marble and you violently chip away at it.
You destroy it to make the shape.
Right. His masterpiece required methodically chipping away her voice, chipping away her freedom, her sense of self, piece by piece, until only the shape he wanted was left.
And here is the ultimate tragic futility of the abuser's methodology that the text exposes.
What's that?
Even after the masterpiece is finished, even after he has successfully carved her down to absolutely nothing to manufacture his art, the room is still hollow.
The hollow.
Using another human being as an emotional prosthetic does not actually heal your internal amputation.
Wow. Emotional prosthetic.
The art gets made, the woman is destroyed, but his underlying foundational emptiness hasn't changed by a single millimeter. He is still alone in a hollow room.
Because the wound was always his. You can't cure an internal infection by putting a bandage on someone else.
Exactly.
But that realization, the crushing clarity that she has been carved away for absolutely nothing, that her destruction didn't even save him, is the catalyst for the final fiery shift in the narrative.
This is where we see a total transfer of power.
Yes.
Throughout this entire relationship, he held the pen, he held the needle, he wrote the cold ink, he authored the narrative.
He had all the control.
But the very act of this song existing, the act of writing this essay, is her seizing the pen.
She's writing her own story now.
Exactly. She is turning a history of extraction into a powerful, autonomous testimony. He used her pain to count the stars. Now, she is the one naming the constellation.
I love that. The resolution hits with this incredible imagery. Let the thread turn to fire. I am more than the fuel for your glow.
The thread turning to fire.
And then the absolute mic drop moment. The greatest part is coming. I'm finally gone.
Let the thread turn to fire. Fire is the ultimate purifying, neutralizing force.
It just burns it all down.
The thread that carried the illusion of fate, the thread that was slick with blood, the thread that acted as a leash, it burns, it turns to ash.
It's gone.
It instantly loses all structural integrity and all authority over her body.
What fascinates me most is her choice of the word gone. She says, the greatest part is coming. I'm finally gone.
Right.
She doesn't say, I'm going to destroy you. She doesn't say, I'm going to make you pay.
She doesn't feed his ego.
No. He spent the entire duration of their relationship waiting for the grand theatrical tragedy of her ultimate collapse. He wanted the operatic spectacle, but she denies him the climax.
It's brilliant.
The real greatest part isn't a spectacle at all. It is the quiet, devastating power of simply withdrawing his access.
Just stepping away.
She isn't erased from existence. She isn't dead. She is just utterly, completely gone from his interpretation. She has unscrewed the lid of the jar, stepped out, and left him with nothing but empty glass.
It's the ultimate defeat of the narcissist.
How so?
You don't beat them by arguing with their narrative. If you argue, you're still participating in their play.
Oh, right. You're still giving them lines.
Exactly. You beat them by removing yourself from the stage entirely. And that brings this deep dive full circle, returning to the biological imagery we started with.
The heartbeat.
Yes. The text notes that the final, fading heartbeat of the song is solo. There is no thread stitched into the wrist anymore.
The foreign object is gone.
The foreign object has been removed. The wound is finally allowed to close, and there is no longer a false narrative interpreting her pulse for someone else's benefit.
So she gets herself back.
The artificial role of the muse dies, but the biological, complex woman survives. The pulse belongs exclusively to her again.
What a profound, exhausting, and ultimately triumphant journey this source material takes us on.
It really is a journey.
We started by examining how the deeply comforting mythology of romantic fate can be weaponized as the perfect disguise for a velvet noose.
A beautiful, deadly trap.
We unpacked the dangerous biological glitch that makes us mistake the adrenaline of a trauma bond for the passion of destiny, confusing the temporary relief of a chokehold loosening for genuine safety.
That biological confusion is so hard to break out of.
It really is. And we explored how idealizing someone, calling them a supernova, is often just a covert strategy for putting them in a jar and consuming their light.
Worship is a form of control.
So for you listening right now, I think this text demands a moment of intense self-reflection.
Okay.
Look at the architecture of your own life. Are there relationships? Are there career paths? Are there family dynamics where you have been quietly tolerating the needle simply because you are addicted to the ink?
That's the core question.
Are you allowing yourself to be carved down, piece by piece, just to make someone else's hollow room feel a little less empty?
And if I can build on those themes to leave you with one final, broader thought to mull over.
Please do.
We exist in a culture that relentlessly incentivizes us to turn our personal pain and the pain of the people around us into public content.
Right, everything is content now.
Everything. We are constantly encouraged to be the observer, to stand outside the jar and count the stars of our own tragedies for an audience.
Oh, wow.
But we have to ask ourselves a vital question. In our rush to make meaning out of our suffering, how do we ensure we don't become the authors of our own empty jars?
That's a scary thought.
If we are the ones constantly carving masterpieces out of our own open wounds, or the wounds of the people we claim to love, are we just leaving ourselves permanently hollow in the process?
That is an incredibly heavy, necessary question to end on, because if you are entirely focused on making art out of the wound, you are never actually doing the work to close the wound.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the comforting myths you've been handed, keep checking your own pulse, and keep untangling the threads in your own lives. We'll see you next time.